Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Salatan. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a Frosh and a Ram's Head intern this year. We've got a panel coming up in a few weeks about some of the lesser known roles in theater, and as a little sneak preview, I'm interviewing Austin Critchlow today about the role of production manager, also known as PM.
All right, so my name is Austin Critchlow. I graduated in 2020. I was pretty heavily involved in Ram's Head throughout my time at Stanford. I was involved in over 12 productions at Stanford and at least 8 for Ram's Head.
What does a production manager do?
Yeah, so big picture, that's making sure all of the technical elements of the show run as smoothly as possible. So everything from kind of initial hiring of all the design staff and figuring out the initial design concepts through the design research process and build process, all the way up to load in strike and making sure everything gets returned after the last performance. Day to day, it's a lot of meetings mostly. It's meetings for the hiring process, especially the assistant hiring process. A lot of times the production manager will kind of be heavily involved in that, figuring out all of the assistant design positions, because usually there's a bunch of people and it's trying to figure out, okay, which department needs the most, which department needs the most assistance or how many they need, and trying to figure that out. Best align people's interests there. And then it's working through meetings for the initial design process, figuring out the design direction for the show. I think a big part of this for the production manager is coordinating all the conversations that happen between the different departments. So any kind of decision that will impact a lot of departments, the production manager will usually be heavily involved in. Right. I'll give the example of like creating the ground plan for the show. That's something that the set designer will kind of come up with originally. The TD will then look at it, technical director TD will look at it and usually make some edits based on kind of what is feasible and what isn't. The lighting designer will usually have some input in terms of where vertical positions go or booms. The sound designer will have kind of positions for like the A2 stuff and all of the cable runs. The stage management team will have prop tables and things like that, and the rehearsal team will want to be involved in figuring out all the entrances and exits. So coordinating that is kind of like a good example of like what a week-to-week task might be, and trying to have all the conversations to make sure that that gets done on time. And I think like another part of it with Ram's Head is there's always kind of a breakdown between where the gray area between the production manager and the technical director. Some shows have one or the other, some shows have both. And depending on the kind of skill set between them, they kind of can share roles. So for Pippin, I was involved in a lot of just like the coordinating of the build schedule and like communicating with the company and the cast in particular about build signups and whatnot, and tracking that. So that's kind of a logistical challenge that the TD just didn't have to deal with. And then I also did some of the like technical drafting for the ground plan and whatnot, where that's something that can be split between the TD and the PM, kind of depending on the show. One thing specific to the Ram's Head TD that's not like a thing in the real world is all of the coordination that happens with the TAPS department, the Theater and Performance Studies department. That's usually the responsibility of the production manager. So I would have a weekly meeting with Jane, who is the TAPS production manager, bringing up any new kind of concerns that had came up over the week. A cast member wants to wear, or the director wants to put a cast member in roller skates during the show. What's the safety protocol on that? The TD, built this thing. Do they have to fireproof it so that we don't get in trouble with the fire marshal? Those conversations. And then like the biggest kind of task of all is coordinating the load in and strike process. And that's kind of the culmination of everything. Everything kind of has to be in place before then, design-wise, in order to make that go as smoothly as possible.
What's something that you kind of learned on the job?
Yeah, I think a good takeaway that I had from it that I think is kind of important for people to realize, especially if it's a role that kind of they're interested in. I came into it from having kind of past experience as a designer. I was a lighting designer in a couple different shows. Theatrical design in general can be very like technical in a way, but it is still like very creative. And you're at the core kind of helping to fulfill your own creative vision and the creative vision of the director. The production manager is very much a facilitator role, and it's, you know, having a creative vision and enabling a creative vision are two very different kind of tasks. And I think as a production manager, you have to be really comfortable with not having a lot of stake in the creative vision. You know what I mean? It's not your thing. You can say that, you know, you're kind of there to be like, well, this might not be technically feasible. But ultimately, your job is to try and fulfill the director and the creative team's vision to the best extent possible.
And what drew you to this role in particular?
Yeah, I think it felt like a good progression for me, and kind of was a good culmination to my time in Ramshead. Like as I said, I did lighting design for 2 shows, and it felt like the next logical step. I didn't want to lighting design again. Wanted to kind of leave that role for someone else, and the production manager felt like a good thing for me to kind of oversee everything and try and both better my skills kind of as a leader and manager, um, you know, that I could utilize in the professional space, but also kind of put a bow on the entire Ramshead experience for me at least.
Yeah. I also know you're involved with the IKC, which stands for Institutional Knowledge Committee. I know nothing about that, but can you kind of give a breakdown?
Yeah. Okay. So I was the chair of the first Institutional Knowledge Committee, which was last year, 2019 to 2020. Basically, the committee was created to try and pull together all of the different institutional knowledge and like experiences that people have had, to try and consolidate that into one place so that it wouldn't kind of get lost into the time. So one of the things that we did was compiled a lot of the information that people conducted interviews with people. There were a couple of handbooks already existing, and we supplemented those and expanded that out to most of the staff positions, at least, um, so that everyone kind of has access to those nitty gritty details. And then compiled all of the past kind of Google Drive folders that were being used to store all of the company stuff. So again, from a lighting design perspective, again, like you can go in and see like the plots from the 80s, 2016 through 2020, and kind of use that as a base for whatever you're working on.
No, that's so incredible, especially because there's such a high high turnover rate among
Right,
college
right.
students. Thank you so much for coming in and speaking with me. If you want to hear more about the hidden roles in theater, go ahead and register for our panel that's coming up in a couple weeks this spring quarter.